3 months into my engagement with Matthew, he had already cycled through 4 different girlfriends. On the day we broke off the engagement, I was dead drunk. From a crowd of male models, I picked the most handsome one. "You," I said, pointing at him. "Spend the night with me." After a night of chaos and passion, I stared in shock at the dragon tattoo on the man's left wrist. Later, I suddenly started vomiting and was diagnosed with a pregnancy. My family forced me to terminate the child. That night, the hospital was surrounded by countless bodyguards in black. A cold-faced man kicked open the door to the operating room and, without saying a word, bent down and carried me off the surgical table. 1 month after giving birth, just as my daughter and I were being taken to the wedding venue, I unexpectedly received a phone call from Matthew. "Michelle, what are you doing? I miss you. Can I come find you?" His voice sounded incredibly downcast. I glanced at the jealous-looking man not far from me, then smiled calmly. "I just finished my postpartum recovery and I'm getting married. If you're coming, don't forget the red envelope and a gift. Thanks." The moment I walked into the banquet hall, I received a message from my best friend. It was a screenshot of a social media post Matthew had just made 10 minutes ago. "This little flower bud is going to bloom for me tonight." The attached photo showed a pretty young girl leaning shyly against him. I put away my phone and looked up, only to see Matthew. He had his arm around a girl dressed in white, with pale skin and inky black hair. Her almond-shaped eyes were clear and innocent, just like the girl in the photo. Matthew was coaxing her, holding a dazzling diamond ring in his hand, preparing to slip it onto her finger. "Matthew, looks like you're getting serious this time," someone teased. Matthew gave a lazy smile, pinching the girl's soft cheek. "Yeah, time to settle down. You're done playing around?" "Done. It's boring now." The moment those words fell, everyone at the table turned their gaze toward me. Matthew spared me only a fleeting glance before looking away. His new girlfriend, however, looked curious. "Mr. Clark, who's she?" "She's so pretty." Matthew let out a mocking chuckle. "My future wife." At that, the girl's face changed instantly. She pushed him away, visibly upset. Matthew simply pulled her back into his arms, making her blush with embarrassment. She really was quite cute. Everyone at the table looked at me with pity and sympathy. It was the 3rd month of my engagement to Matthew. This girl was his 4th girlfriend since then. Oddly enough, I didn't feel the slightest bit of anger this time. "You all enjoy. I've got something to take care of," I said, withdrawing my gaze and preparing to leave. Matthew lifted his eyes lazily to look at me. His gaze darkened slightly as he played with the girl's fingers. "Michelle." I didn't stop walking. "If you walk out of here today, our engagement is over." That actually made me laugh. I stopped and turned back to look at him. Seeing me pause, Matthew curved his lips slightly. "Come here. Sit with me." "Matthew," I said, holding his gaze. And in that moment, I realized, I didn't love him as much as I thought I did. "Let's break off the engagement." "What did you just say?" Matthew's voice dropped low, his eyes darkening. He shoved the girl on his lap aside. "Mr. Clark," she cried, nearly falling over. She pouted in protest. "Get out," he barked without turning his head. The girl, startled and tearful, covered her face and ran out. The room fell into a dead silence. I looked at Matthew as calmly as if I were asking what he wanted for dinner. "Matthew, I've made up my mind. Our engagement ends here." As I left, I vaguely heard something shatter behind me. But I didn't turn back. Stepping out into the alluring spring night, I exhaled a long, deep breath. For the first time, I felt free, truly and completely free. I had applied to a university in Hong Kong because of that engagement. For over 3 years here, it felt like my entire world revolved around Matthew. My family always thought marrying into the Clark family was the greatest fortune. But only I knew how bitter it truly was. My best friend Emily called me, furious and anxious. "Michelle, what is Matthew doing? Does he even remember he has a fiancé? He just announced he's throwing a yacht party at Victoria Harbor tomorrow night. All-night fireworks, celebrating his new girlfriend's birthday." I cut her off. "Emily, want to go grab a drink? Michelle? That club you love? Let's party all night." For over 3 years in university, I'd been a well-behaved, obedient girl. My parents constantly warned me not to step out of line and embarrass the Scott family. "Keep your reputation intact. Don't let the Clark family be disappointed. Your chastity is your best dowry." But Matthew, in private, told people, "Michelle's just an old-fashioned mainland girl. Kissing her is like kissing air, no fun at all." So you see, how laughable all those words were. Emily, already tipsy, pointed at the row of male models in front of us and waved dramatically. "Michelle, take your pick. Tonight's on me." I rested my chin on my hand, seriously studying the men. To be fair, they were all quite good-looking. But none made my heart race. I waved dismissively. "Next batch." Not impressed. Michelle, what kind of god are you waiting for? Emily pouted. I swear, the most handsome escorts in all of Hong Kong are here tonight. I want that one. I cut her off, my gaze locking on a man descending the stairs in the distance. Emily followed my gaze, eyes widening. Holy crap, Michelle, he's a real god. I straightened, staring at the man intently. Broad shoulders, narrow waist, long legs. His body was flawless. But most importantly, his face. So devastatingly handsome, and those arrogant, untamed eyes, he was exactly my type. You, I said, pointing straight at him. Spend the night with me. I stood up unsteadily and walked over. What's your name? The man raised a brow, clearly amused. Ethan. I didn't notice that the group originally standing behind Ethan had quietly stepped away. Coming with me? I asked. Ethan's smile deepened. Miss Scott, I'll come with you. I reached out my hand. Ethan lowered his gaze, noticing the engagement ring on my left ring finger. You're engaged? I suddenly remembered the ring and felt a wave of disgust. I yanked it off and tossed it into the trash. Not anymore. Ethan smiled slowly. His hand closed around mine. Miss Scott, where are we going tonight? Where to? I walked forward without a destination in mind, my head filled with the messages my parents had just sent. Michelle, who gave you permission to call off the engagement? How could you be so immature? Go apologize to Matthew right now, do you hear me? The housekeeper says you haven't returned to the apartment. A girl staying out all night? Your reputation will be ruined. If you dare do something disgraceful and humiliate the Scott family, your father and I will never forgive you. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Turning to look at Ethan beside me, I asked, want to go to a hotel? Do you dare? While Ethan was in the shower, Emily bombarded me with photos and voice messages on WeChat. Babe, I did all the digging for you. He just started working there tonight. He's super clean. I read every single word on his health report. No risks whatsoever. Babe, enjoy yourself tonight. You're almost 22 and you've only kissed someone once? So pitiful. From my expert analysis, he's definitely going to blow your mind tonight. Just as she said that last sentence, Ethan pushed the door open and stepped out. Panicked, I scrambled to shut WeChat, my ears burning red from embarrassment. Ethan leaned against the doorframe, amusement tugging at his lips. Miss Scott, how exactly would you like to be blown away tonight? Clutching my phone with trembling fingers, I feigned composure. That's your job, isn't it? Why ask me? He tossed the damp towel aside and walked over to me. Leaning down, he braced both hands on the arms of the single sofa I was sitting in. My nose nearly bumped into his chest. I reflexively leaned back, but Ethan scooped me into his arms. Well then, Miss Scott, enjoy tonight. I'll do my best to fulfill my professional duties and make sure you're satisfied. But things didn't go quite as smoothly as expected. Just before dawn, I ended up sobbing and biting Ethan's shoulder. I'm going to report you. 1-star review. It hurts like hell. Sweat beaded across Ethan's forehead. He chuckled softly, then leaned down to kiss me. His voice was husky. I'm sorry. I didn't do well. Sorry doesn't cut it. Your skills are terrible. I snapped at him, eyes red and puffy, utterly aggrieved. His lips brushed the tears on my cheek. Baby, give me one more chance. Truthfully, he wasn't to blame. It was my first time, no matter how skilled he was, pain was inevitable. But I was irrational. If it hurts again, I swear I'll report you and get you fired. Alright. Ethan wrapped one hand around my waist and gently lifted my leg with the other. In the dim lighting, I wasn't sure if it was just my imagination, but the moment he lowered himself and kissed me again, there was unmistakable tenderness in his eyes. Perhaps because it was my first time letting go like that, I didn't sleep well. In fact, I woke up earlier than Ethan. Soft morning light streamed in through the curtains that hadn't been fully drawn. Ethan's arm was draped tightly around me, his breathing slow and steady in deep sleep. I gazed at his face for a while before gently moving his arm away. That's when I saw it, the dragon tattoo on his left wrist. I froze, stunned. Because of Matthew, I'd heard rumors about the powerful families in Hong Kong and Macau. And that dragon tattoo? It only appeared on the wrist of the heir to the Stewart family in Macau. The Stewarts, a family with terrifying ties to the underworld, known to have one hand over the entire region. I hadn't just mistaken the Stewart heir for a male escort, I had slept with him. I thought of the tabloid horror stories, women who got involved with the wrong men and ended up hunted down. Panicked, I didn't even shower. I threw on my clothes in a frenzy and fled the room. Then I booked the earliest flight back to Beijing. Surely, under the emperor's nose in the capital, even a kill order wouldn't reach me, right? When Ethan woke up, his hand instinctively reached for the spot beside him, only to find it empty. The sleep vanished from his eyes instantly. Sitting up, he noticed a single pearl earring lying on the bed. His lips curved slightly. Michelle, she was far more surprising than he'd imagined. A shy, conservative, well-behaved mainland girl, so skittish that one teasing word could make her flee like a startled rabbit. Yet she had gone to a nightclub, picked out a male escort, and brought him to a hotel. And despite her boldness, it had been her first time. Ethan thought of how she had cried, whimpered, scratched, and even bit him that night. And yet, he had patiently soothed her for half the night. In the end, she'd calmed down, curled up in his arms with red-rimmed eyes like a little bunny. It had made his heart melt completely. If he could, he'd want her to give birth to a whole litter of adorable little bunnies just like her. He picked up the pearl earring, his eyes falling on the vivid trace of blood on the sheets. Well then. Just like before, she'd disappeared again, faster than anyone could catch. He, the heir to the Stewart family, who held sway in both light and dark worlds, had been slept with and then ghosted. How was he supposed to live that down? But when he thought of her soft sobbing, the way she had cried with such helplessness, his heart softened again. Ethan grabbed his phone and made a call. Find out where Michelle is right now. Once you do, tie her up, call me. I'll bring her back myself. His voice was cold as he hung up. As he got out of bed, he pulled the blood-stained sheets off with him. With graduation approaching, most of my classmates had already started their internships. I applied for a short leave from the university as well. After returning to Beijing, I didn't go home. I checked into a hotel instead. On the second night of my stay, I went downstairs to pick up my takeout. And spotted two men in black tactical jackets standing in the lobby. Something about them made me uneasy. Sometimes, a woman's sixth sense can be frighteningly accurate. I thought of the Stewart heir in Macau. I thought of how I'd mistaken Ethan for an escort, then brought him to a hotel and used him without a second thought. I thought of the dragon tattoo on his wrist, its meaning and all the stories that came with it. A chill ran down my spine. If Ethan wanted to come after me, even in Beijing, it would be effortless. I didn't even bother to eat. That same night, I checked out and switched to another hotel. The taxi pulled up outside. As I walked out of the hotel lobby, I had a vague feeling that those two men in black were following me. Panic made me clumsy, and I nearly tripped getting into the car. It wasn't until the taxi had been driving for quite a while, and I saw no signs of anyone following, that my racing heart finally began to calm down. Maybe I was overthinking it. After all, the crown prince of the Stewart family, the undisputed heir, probably wouldn't waste his time on someone as insignificant as me. At that moment, Ethan received a call from Beijing. Young master, we saw Miss Scott. But she seemed to notice us. She looked really frightened and flustered. She was scared, he asked, his voice lowering. Yes, sir. Miss Scott suddenly changed hotels. She almost tripped getting into the car just now. We were afraid if we kept following her, she'd panic even more, so we didn't act. Ethan gripped his phone tightly, standing atop the highest floor of a skyscraper. All of Macau sprawled beneath his feet. He had it all. And yet, in that moment, an empty ache gnawed at his chest. Michelle had always been like this, even from the very first time he met her. More than 3 years had passed, and she hadn't changed at all. Still timid. Still hopelessly naive. Otherwise, how could Matthew have treated her so cruelly? Back then, Ethan had assumed Michelle was just a good little girl who loved Matthew. So he rarely came to Hong Kong and never bothered to learn more about her. But that night had changed everything. If Michelle truly loved Matthew, she would have never dared to do something so outrageous. She would have never been the one to call off their engagement. Matthew's family was one of the top-tier elites in Hong Kong. As for Michelle, if not for the engagement arranged by their grandfathers, the Scott family would have never qualified to marry into that circle. Young master, what should we do now? His subordinate's voice brought him back to the present. Ethan looked out over the dazzling city lights, lit a cigarette, and replied in a low voice, stay in Beijing. Keep an eye on her situation. Be careful. Don't scare her again. If anything happens, inform me immediately. No delays. He hung up and walked back to his desk. Opening a drawer, his gaze fell on the single pearl earring. Unbidden, memories of that night came rushing back. Michelle, teary-eyed, scolding him for being terrible at his job and threatening to file a complaint. Ethan couldn't help but laugh softly to himself. Every time he thought of her, adorably sulky, pitifully sweet, his heart melted all over again. After the unsettling encounter with those two suspicious men, the following days passed without incident. I stayed in the new hotel for a full week, and nothing happened. Just as I began to let my guard down, it hit me. In the chaos of fleeing, I had completely forgotten about contraception. My mind went blank. I lay in bed for half an hour before finally calling Emily. Michelle, are you okay? I heard Matthew broke up with that girl. He called me yesterday asking why you haven't been back to school. I think he's trying to crawl back to you. The moment she answered, Emily launched into her usual chatter before I could say a word. I waited for her to finish, then let out a sigh. Emily, I really don't care what grass Matthew is chewing. I just want to know, if we didn't use protection, is it possible I'm pregnant? There was a piercing shriek on the other end of the line. Ah, Michelle, are you insane? You didn't use anything? I closed my eyes. What could I do? I've been allergic to all rubber products since I was a child. Ugh, well, yeah, but didn't you take a morning after pill? It all happened so fast. I panicked and totally forgot. I only just remembered now. How many times did you do it? Does that really matter? It does. I grabbed a pillow and buried my face in it. After a long moment, I mumbled, I think, 3 times. Another ear-splitting shriek followed. 3 times? Just 3? But he looked so powerful. Shouldn't it have been like 7 or 8 times in one night? Emily. I was nearly fuming. Can we not debate that right now? Just tell me what I should do. Buy a test kit. Check it. And if I really am pregnant? Michelle, don't be stupid. He's just a male escort. If you're pregnant, you have to get rid of it immediately. My scalp tingled. I wanted to tell her he wasn't a male escort. He was Ethan, heir to the Stewart family. But knowing Emily's loud voice and looser lips, I instantly scrapped the idea. I'll go buy a test later. But before I could, I started to feel off, an odd cramping in my lower abdomen. When I went to the bathroom, I saw a bit of blood. My period wasn't supposed to come for another week, but maybe it arrived early? In any case, the bleeding reassured me, I probably wasn't pregnant. At last, I could breathe again. Maybe it was stress, maybe my body was simply out of sorts. This time, my period was light and ended in just a few days. And then, to my surprise, Matthew came to Beijing. My parents sent the family driver to pick me up. I hadn't wanted to return, but I knew things with Matthew needed a final closure. So I packed my things and headed home. Strangely enough, it was Matthew's first time visiting our house. Even when we got engaged, the ceremony had been held in Hong Kong. But my parents never considered it improper. After all, marrying into the Clark family was a big win for them. This time, Matthew arrived with grand gestures. 2 cars loaded with lavish gifts. My parents were glowing with pride, unable to hide their excitement. Even my grandfather, who had been recovering in the countryside, was brought back in person. As soon as my car pulled up, Matthew came rushing out to greet me. My mom smiled so wide it nearly split her face. Michelle, look at you, still acting so stubborn with Matthew, and yet he's so forgiving and even speaking up for you. Please don't blame Michelle, Auntie, Matthew said gently. I was the one being immature before. She had every right to be upset. My dad chimed in immediately, boys will be boys. What man doesn't mess around a bit? Michelle's the one being too rigid. She should have been more understanding. In any case, this is all my fault. Matthew looked at me, his gaze full of tenderness. Michelle, I was wrong. I'm apologizing to you. Please don't be mad anymore. To be honest, I was surprised. Matthew had chased after other women, openly or secretly, more times than I could count. But he had never once admitted fault, never lowered his head. Besides, I had barely any feelings for him to begin with. Whatever shred of affection once existed had long been worn away by his indifference and infidelity. So this version of him, suddenly so tender and apologetic, only made me feel numb, and strangely, even repulsed. Michelle. Matthew saw me standing there without any expression, and his brows drew together. He stepped closer and extended his hand to me. I noticed the engagement ring on his left ring finger. And I thought of the one that should have been on mine, the one I had already thrown into the trash. Just like Matthew himself. That's where he belonged, among the garbage. I didn't take his hand. Instead, I stepped back. The smile on his face cracked and vanished completely. My parents' expressions changed too. Michelle, that's enough. If you keep making a scene, it just shows you were raised with no manners. Fine, I said coldly. Maybe I wasn't. Maybe I'm rude and ungrateful. But is it really wrong to not want to marry a man who can't stay loyal? I told you, young people fool around. That's normal, my father insisted. Besides, Matthew already apologized. What more do you want? A chill swept through me, biting all the way to my bones. These were my parents. Yet in their eyes, I wasn't a daughter, I was just a commodity. A valuable item to be sold at the right price. Whether the item was happy or not didn't matter at all. I don't want to keep pretending. I won't turn myself into a resentful housewife just to please anyone. I stepped back again. Let's dissolve the engagement. I already told Mr. Clark in Hong Kong. I turned to Matthew. And if I recall correctly, you said the moment I walked out of that banquet hall, the engagement would be off. Matthew's face turned darker by the second. Michelle, can we talk, seriously? There's nothing to talk about. Mr. Clark, someone of your status? I'm not worthy to climb that high. Michelle. My mother was furious. She grabbed my arm. How can you be so willful? What do you mean, not worthy? You and Matthew are engaged. It's normal for couples to fight, how can you go so far as to break it off? Matthew, don't be upset. She's being stubborn right now. I'll talk to her grandfather. Let him discipline her properly. But Matthew only let out a mocking laugh. No need. Matthew. Auntie, since Michelle has made up her mind, then let's just cancel the wedding. He finally looked at me again. Michelle, I broke things off with that girl a while ago. Nothing ever happened between us. That night, I only said what I did because I felt humiliated. I never truly intended to end our engagement. Mr. Clark, I replied calmly, does any of this matter anymore? Matthew gave a bitter smile. He lowered his eyes and casually removed the ring. All right, as you wish. He held the ring out to me. I didn't take it. So he simply tossed it aside. After Matthew left, the atmosphere in the house turned oppressive. My grandfather sat silently in the main seat, coughing violently from time to time. Half an hour passed before he finally spoke. You let such a good marriage slip through your fingers. Don't blame me for being cruel later. Michelle, you're a daughter of the Scott family. You've enjoyed its wealth and privilege, now it's time to give something back. You know as well as I do, our family's glory days are long gone. We're barely holding on. We thought if you married into the Clark family, the Scott name could slowly rise again. But clearly, we just aren't that lucky. He rose slowly, leaning on his cane. No time to waste. Let's start arranging blind dates again. Grandpa, I said, looking at the weary old man before me, I'll move out of the Scott family home. From now on, I won't take a single cent from you. And I'll never marry. His expression didn't shift. Fine, he said at last. Then pay us back everything we've spent raising you. His gaze was cold, his smile colder. We won't be unreasonable. Let's say 20 million yuan for the past 2 decades. That's fair, isn't it? 20 million? I laughed bitterly. Even 10 years ago, the Scott family didn't have 20 million in assets. Well, if you can't pay it back, then you'll marry as we say. Someone out there is willing to pay 20 or 30 million for a bride like you. The Scott family didn't raise you for free, Michelle. Don't be so ungrateful. That's not how decent people behave. They locked me inside the house. 2 weeks later, the matchmaking began again. But maybe it was because of the rumors about Matthew, or because the Scott family's financial situation had scared off potential suitors. No fool was eager to jump in. Fortunately, I needed to return to Hong Kong to prepare for my graduation thesis and defense. After all, that golden diploma would polish my value a bit more. The Scott family still cared about appearances, so my parents personally accompanied me back to Hong Kong. By now, Matthew's scandals were all over the news. Word was, he was lavishing a third-rate actress with jewelry, cars, and even a villa. My parents were furious, more at me than him. They berated me for not holding on to him, and one day, in a fit of rage, my father even struck me. Emily saw the handprint on my cheek and trembled with anger. Michelle, cut ties with them. Seriously. Parents like that, they're worse than animals. 20 million, Emily. Even if they sliced me up and sold me inch by inch, I wouldn't be worth that much. I gave a helpless smile, but my heart felt unbearably heavy. Michelle, this is too much, it's too cruel. What are you going to do? I let out a dry laugh. Somehow, I had this overwhelming sense of dread, as if I'd fallen into a deep, inescapable pit. One I might never climb out of in this lifetime. Michelle. Emily tugged at my sleeve, her face pale as she looked past me. That male escort you hired that night, he's here. I turned around instinctively, and locked eyes with Ethan. In that instant, my scalp prickled and my back was drenched in cold sweat. There was no time to think. My body reacted before my brain could. I shot to my feet, grabbed Emily, and tried to flee. But I didn't notice the chair in front of me. My skirt snagged on its arm, and I nearly fell. Ethan was faster. He caught my arm and steadied me before I hit the ground. Michelle, why are you running? Ethan asked. Emily stared at me, dumbfounded. Michelle, he knows your name? Ethan lifted his gaze and shot her a cool glance, just one. But it was enough to shut her up instantly. Afraid he might turn that chill toward Emily again, I forced myself to stay calm. Emily, you should head back. I'll contact you later. Emily seemed like she wanted to say something, but when she glanced at Ethan again, she shrank back instinctively. Oh, okay, just don't stay out too late, alright? Don't worry, I nodded. Once Emily left, I turned to Ethan. Mr. Stewart, let's talk. I'm really sorry about that night, I began. I was drunk. I thought you were. I trailed off, too embarrassed to say it. After all, I had mistaken the heir of the Stewart family for a male escort. What a disgrace. The fact that Ethan hadn't sent someone after me the next day was already a miracle. But then Ethan suddenly reached out and gripped my chin, eyes darkening with anger. "Michelle, what happened to your face?" I froze, remembering the handprint on my cheek. The flood of pent-up frustration and grievance surged in my chest. But what did any of this have to do with Ethan? "It's nothing." I tried to push his hand away, but he wouldn't let go. "Who hit you? Michelle, tell me." My eyes reddened without warning. "My family. It's not your concern. Just stay out of it." "They tried to force you back with Matthew, didn't they? Tried to make you marry again?" I was stunned. How did you know?" Then I remembered the two suspicious men I'd seen back in Beijing. "You've been having me followed." I had thought his people had left after that night. But clearly, everything I'd done had been under Ethan's watch all along. "Michelle, I didn't send anyone to spy on you. Mr. Stewart," I cut him off. "I know I was wrong that night. I sincerely apologize." Ethan was the kind of man I couldn't afford to offend. I couldn't afford to be entangled with him, either. His hand slowly released me, and the fury in his eyes gave way to something deeper, something more solemn. "So, what are you trying to say?" "I'm saying I'm sorry. I really am. Can we just let it go?" "Let it go," he echoed. "What does that even mean?" "I mean, can we pretend it never happened?" I looked up at him, eyes rimmed red. I was exhausted, completely drained from everything going on at home. I didn't have the strength to deal with Ethan too. He didn't reply, but his expression grew darker. I clenched my jaw and continued, "If you want revenge, just take it. I'll accept whatever you do." "Revenge?" Ethan let out a dry laugh, half amused, half hurt. But after the laughter faded, a trace of loneliness flickered in his eyes. "Michelle, you really want to cut all ties with me, don't you?" I slowly nodded. All I wanted was for him to let me go. He said nothing more. But he raised his hand again. I flinched, thinking he might strike me. Instead, his fingertips gently brushed the bruise on my cheek. "Michelle, you haven't changed one bit. Still look timid, but rebellious to the core." I blinked, stunned. "Mr. Stewart?" He gave a bitter, self-mocking smile. I must be out of my mind. Crazy, for never being able to forget her. Crazy, for knowing she was already engaged, and still refusing to let go. Crazy, for that night setting off the wild idea of marrying her. And yet, she never liked him. Never noticed him. She didn't even remember they had met before. Still, he couldn't stop worrying about her. Couldn't stop aching for her. Seeing the marks on her face made him want to kill someone. But she didn't need his concern. Ethan's hand slid away from my face. He took a step back and gave me one last look. "Michelle, you'd better pray your life turns out okay." I didn't quite understand what he meant. But he didn't explain. Just turned and walked away without looking back. If Michelle lived well, maybe Ethan could finally forget her. But if she didn't, if she was hurt, humiliated, then his heart would never stop caring. And for him, that was the cruelest kind of torment. Because his love, his worry? Michelle never asked for it. Never wanted it. On the way back to school, I got a stream of WeChat messages from Emily. "Michelle? No way. A male escort with that kind of aura?" He looked at me once and I nearly passed out. What did he want? Was he trying to start something with you again? Or blackmail you? But honestly, when he swooped in to save you, damn, that was hot. Honestly, why not just keep him? He's unreal. Total god tier. "Sis, you ate so well that night." I stared at the messages, not sure whether to laugh or cry. But it was over. Truly over between me and Ethan. I just replied, "All settled. Let's not talk about it again, babe." "What? That's it? But it's such a pity." I stared at my screen, and, without meaning to, thought of Ethan's back as he walked away. That untouchable, noble heir of the Stewart family. Even he had moments of quiet sorrow. Time passed quickly. At another charity banquet in Hong Kong, my parents somehow got their hands on invitations again. They were desperate to market me, to find a buyer. They even spent a fortune on a couture gown for me. But the banquet had barely started when. The moment I smelled the raw fish from a tray of fresh sashimi, I couldn't hold it back. I threw up. Violently. Right there in front of everyone. The host panicked, thinking it was food poisoning or alcohol, and immediately called an ambulance. No one expected the truth. I hadn't eaten anything bad. I was pregnant. Nearly 7 weeks along. No matter how hard I tried to wrap my head around it. I never imagined I'd end up in this situation. Thinking back now, that bleeding I had earlier must have been light spotting during early pregnancy. I had mistaken it for my period. This child was Ethan's. I didn't even dare imagine what the Scott family would do if they found out the baby I was carrying belonged to him. They would shamelessly pounce, trying to sink their teeth into the Stewart family like bloodthirsty leeches. "Michelle, whose child is it?" my father demanded. I gave a soft laugh. After breaking up with Matthew, I was upset and went drinking. I was drunk, I didn't even know who it was. My father was so enraged, he slapped me across the face. Twice. Michelle, you've brought shame on the entire Scott family. This baby has to go. It must be taken care of immediately, and no one can find out. If word gets out you got pregnant before marriage and even had an abortion, what man would pay a high price to marry you? Tears rolled down my cheeks as I smiled bitterly. If I'm such a disgrace, then just disown me. What, and let 20 years of raising you go to waste? You'd better give up this foolish idea now. Get the procedure done, finish school, then return to Beijing and get married. I didn't reply, but in my heart, the decision was already made. This time, no matter what, I had to escape the Scott family. That very night, they transferred me to a private hospital in Hong Kong. The abortion was scheduled for 8 p.m. They had chosen a private hospital for its discretion. But no one expected what happened next. Just as I was being wheeled into the operating room, dozens of luxury cars rolled into the hospital grounds. Leading them was a black Hummer with dual license plates. In the blink of an eye, black-suited bodyguards swarmed in and surrounded the building. Then, with a cold face and a gun in hand, Ethan stormed into the surgical suite, kicking the half-closed door wide open. The doctor, preparing to administer anesthesia, was so startled that he dropped the syringe. I sat up in shock as Ethan strode toward the bed and scooped me into his arms without hesitation. No one dared to stop him. 2 rows of armed bodyguards stood outside the room, weapons drawn. My parents were so terrified they couldn't even stand. As Ethan carried me out, my father shakily rose to his feet, trying to speak. But Ethan merely glanced at him. Just one look, and my father cowered back against the wall in silence. It was you two who tried to force her to get rid of the baby? Ethan asked coldly. My father said nothing, nudging my mother forward to answer for him. Yes, no, I mean, we only did it for Michelle's sake. She's still young, having a baby out of wedlock would ruin her reputation. Exactly, girls have to protect their image, my mother echoed, scrambling for excuses. Ethan lowered his gaze to me. I was still stunned by everything that had just happened, still in a daze. All these years, I've only ever liked one woman, he said softly, his tone almost lazy, but his words sent chills down everyone's spine. And you Scott family, have done nothing but hurt her again and again. Sir, Michelle is our daughter. How could we hurt her? I know exactly what you've done. Still holding me, Ethan took a single step forward. My parents shrank back further into the corner, their backs pressed to the wall. There was nowhere left to run. They were truly terrified. Because every single one of Ethan's bodyguards was armed, and it was clear none of this was for show. We won't do it again, we swear, please, we'll never hurt her again, they begged, groveling like cowards, practically on their knees. Ethan gave a slight nod, and one of the guards stepped forward to drag them up from the floor. I'll give you one way out, Ethan said. Tomorrow, place a public announcement in all major newspapers, Hong Kong, Macau, and Beijing, disowning Michelle. What? That's too much? If you refuse, then neither of you will walk out of here alive tonight. Oh, and one more thing, Ethan added, tone cool and final. From now on, the Scott family no longer exists. At his words, the bodyguards raised their guns and pressed the barrels against my parents' temples. We'll do it. We'll publish it. We'll disown her first thing tomorrow. From this moment on, Michelle has no ties to the Scott family. Yes, understood. She will be my wife. The future madam of the Stewart family. The next mistress of the house. Stewart, family? My father's eyes widened in shock. In that moment, I saw terror in his eyes. Shock. Disbelief. A flicker of greedy excitement. And finally, despair. They had spent years trying to sell me off to some powerful man, to use me to prolong the Scott family's dying legacy. But they never expected. When the dream finally came true, it would have nothing to do with them. During the car ride, maybe because of pregnancy fatigue, or maybe because I was just too emotionally drained, I fell asleep in Ethan's arms. When I woke again, the car had stopped. I rubbed my sleepy eyes and glanced out the window. Bright lights glowed in the night, illuminating a massive mansion perched atop a hill. It looked more like a palace than a home. Where are we? Our home, Ethan said softly. He lowered his head and kissed me gently on the brow. Still sleepy? Then keep resting. I wanted to answer, but I only nodded, then drifted back to sleep. Ethan chuckled quietly, cradled me in his arms, and stepped out of the car. He carried me all the way inside, up to the second-floor master bedroom. I was fast asleep, completely unaware. Ethan stayed in the room for a while, watching over me, before finally heading downstairs. The butler had gathered all the staff, maids, guards, and workers, in the grand foyer. Ethan surveyed the group, then spoke with a rare seriousness. She is my future wife. The future mistress of the Stewart family. The room collectively gasped, but no one dared say a word. You will treat her exactly as you treat me. If she wakes up, inform me immediately. He finished speaking, then reached for his coat and walked toward the door. Have the car ready. I'm going to see the old man. That night, I slept more soundly than I ever had in my entire life. It felt like 20 years of exhaustion had finally melted away. By the time I woke up, it was almost 9 a.m. The room was unfamiliar. Yet, strangely, I didn't feel the slightest bit uneasy. After washing up, I casually picked a new dress from the wardrobe and headed downstairs. To my surprise, Ethan was sitting in the living room. When he saw me, he didn't rise. He remained seated. Go eat something, he said. Have you eaten yet? I asked. Already did. He lowered his gaze again and resumed reading his newspaper. Maybe it was just my imagination, but he didn't look well. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his whole body seemed a little worn down. I didn't ask. Instead, I quietly sat down, and began to eat. Ethan's hand rested on his knee as he subtly rubbed it. Last night, he had gone to see his grandfather. Not only did he take more than a dozen strikes of the Stewart family's traditional punishment, he also knelt downstairs the entire night until 6 in the morning. Even with his strong physique, the ordeal nearly ruined his legs. But even if it had, he would have accepted it willingly. Because the old man had finally relented. Which meant Ethan now had a 70% chance of marrying Michelle. The remaining 30%, of course, depended on Michelle herself. She had to be willing. Ethan had always been proud and confident. This was the first time in his life he felt unsure of the outcome. He couldn't help glancing toward the dining room. Michelle was sitting quietly, taking delicate bites of her fried egg. Her profile looked soft and obedient, almost angelic. Ethan's heart softened like melting snow. This was the girl who had completely stolen his heart, yet refused to take his. And he had absolutely no way of dealing with her. Now that she was pregnant with his child. Just thinking about it made his heart swell, ached sweetly, and left him desperate to marry her immediately. But he held himself back. If he scared her again, she might run. Just like she had that morning, disappearing without a trace. Ethan never wanted to experience that kind of helplessness again. Watching the one you love walk away, and being powerless to stop her. Ethan took me to the Stewart family estate to meet his grandfather. The man, rumored to be a legend in the business world, turned out to be a kindly old gentleman in person. And it was only then that I found out Ethan had knelt the entire night for me. This boy has always been proud, never willing to bow his head, the old man sighed. He's 27 now, and this is the first time I've seen him like that. I knew, if I didn't give in, he would fight me to the bitter end. That would have only strained our relationship. So I chose to support him. And now that I've met you, I finally understand why he's so determined. But I still didn't understand. Ethan and I only met because of that one-night mistake. I wasn't naive enough to believe he had fallen in love with me because of it. Still, my impression of Ethan had changed dramatically. I remembered seeing him sitting downstairs that morning, not rising to greet me. At the time, I had secretly scoffed at how much of a prince he acted like. Now I knew, it was probably because his legs hurt so much he couldn't stand. Even 2 or 3 days later, Ethan still winced from time to time when he walked. As we left the old man's study, I couldn't help gently tugging on Ethan's sleeve. Are your legs still hurting? He looked down at my fingers grasping his coat. After a long pause, he said, they're better, but still hurt when I walk. Did you apply medicine? I always forget. I haven't been doing it on time. Then I'll remind you every day from now on, I said. The corner of Ethan's mouth seemed to curve up slightly. Then, just as I let go of his sleeve, he caught my hand and held it gently. Okay. Then remind me every day. And so, daily reminders eventually turned into me applying the medicine for him 3 times a day. Only now did I realize, this man was an expert at pushing his luck. He even pulled the wounded soldier act to coax a kiss from me. By the 5th month of my pregnancy, things between Ethan and me had progressed significantly. When I invited Emily over to visit, she acted like she was dreaming. It wasn't until Ethan went upstairs to his study that she pulled me aside, her eyes sparkling. Wait, Michelle. Are you telling me the guy you slept with that night was the heir to the Stewart family? She nearly shrieked. My God, you're amazing. First time hiring a male model, and you hit the jackpot with a crown prince. When will I ever be this lucky? Tell me, what was it like sleeping with him? Does he really have superhuman stamina? 7 times a night? I was both exasperated and amused. I shoved a grape into her mouth. Can you breathe? Don't choke on your own excitement. How could you keep this from your best friend? Your Highness. The wind blew us apart back then, but now I've finally found you again. You must never cast me aside. I burst into laughter, then suddenly felt a wave of emotion rise. I hugged her tightly. Emily, you were the only friend I made after moving to Hong Kong. But you're also the dearest, most precious friend I have. No matter who I was before, or who I become in the future, that'll never change. Ugh, Michelle, you're such a jerk. Why'd you have to get all sentimental and make me want to cry too? As I teared up, Emily started crying right along with me. Ethan, hearing the commotion from upstairs, panicked and rushed down. When he saw the two of us crying in each other's arms, he thought something serious had happened. His voice trembled. Michelle, are you feeling okay? He pulled me into his arms, anxious. I'm fine, Ethan. Emily and I just got a little emotional. Really? He touched my slightly rounded belly with concern. The little troublemaker in there didn't act up, did he? We hadn't checked the baby's gender yet, but because my pregnancy symptoms had been intense, Ethan was convinced it was a boy, and that explained all the fuss. He always said he didn't want a boy. He just wanted a little girl who looked exactly like me. He was a good boy today. I pouted playfully at him. If you keep calling him a rascal, he'll get upset in there. Emily grabbed her bag and bolted. I'm out here, Michelle. All this sweetness is suffocating. I watched her skip off, laughing out loud. It felt like I had everything I'd ever dreamed of. The best friendship, the sweetest love. Don't let her come over too often, Ethan muttered as he lifted me into his lap. Whenever she's here, you forget all about me. That's not true. This is her first visit. Still, you can't play favorites. I don't. Then kiss me. Properly. No half-hearted pecks. I cupped his impossibly handsome face and looked straight into his eyes. In the dark depths of his pupils, there was only one reflection, me. Sweetness swelled in my heart. I leaned in and kissed him softly on the lips. Ethan threaded his fingers through my hair, tightening his hold and deepening the kiss. I gave birth to a daughter. She had my eyes and mouth, but Ethan's brows and nose. When she turned 1 month old, we held our wedding on a beautiful island abroad. Just before the ceremony began, I unexpectedly received a call, from Matthew. Ethan, clearly displeased, stood off to the side holding our daughter, watching me with narrowed eyes. I smiled and squeezed his fingers in reassurance before answering. Matthew? What is it? Michelle, where are you? I miss you. Can I come see you? Matthew's voice sounded drained and lifeless. I tightened my grip on Ethan's fingers. He tried to pull away, clearly jealous, but I only held on tighter. After a few attempts, he gave up and let me hold his hand. I just finished my postpartum confinement, and I'm in the middle of my wedding ceremony. If you're planning to come, don't forget the red envelope and a gift. Thanks. The other end of the line fell into a deathly silence. I didn't wait for Matthew to respond. I simply hung up. Then, without hesitation, I dragged that long-forgotten number straight into my blacklist. I set my phone down and stood up. Ethan had just placed our daughter gently into her stroller. He wrapped his arms around me tightly. I don't like hearing you say another man's name. Okay. I won't anymore. I also don't like it when you talk to other men for that long. Then from now on, I'll only talk that much to you. Michelle, I love you so much. I know. I love you too. But I've loved you longer, and more. When did you first fall for me? I asked. When you first came to Hong Kong for university, he said. I saw you on campus. The first time I saw you, I wanted to pursue you. But I scared you off. I blinked in confusion. I had absolutely no memory of this. Back then, someone had indeed tried to pursue me, but because of my engagement, I turned everyone down. I was also careful to keep my distance from guys. I ran away? What did you do to scare me off? Well, I parked my car outside your dorm, and I had 10 bodyguards each holding a bouquet of flowers. Ethan looked a little sheepish. I thought girls liked flowers. I burst out laughing, nearly doubling over. But then, suddenly, the memory came back to me. I remembered how Emily and I had huddled together, analyzing the whole incident. In the end, we concluded, this guy was terrifying, we had to stay far away from him. Who pursued a girl like that? It looked more like a kidnapping attempt. Emily had even pointed out that he had a tattoo on his wrist, clearly a mafia man, she said. At that time, I had just arrived in Hong Kong. I was still young, and naturally, I'd been scared out of my wits. Back then, I was quick to judge people by appearances. But now, I finally understood. It was those who looked gentle and refined, like Matthew, who turned out to be the worst. And Ethan? I couldn't stop myself. I tiptoed and kissed him. He was the greatest and most precious treasure I had ever found in this lifetime. Michelle, Ethan said, his voice low and warm, you're going to be my wife. Are you happy? I nodded hard. Ethan, I'm really happy. I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you're always happy. I'll never let anyone hurt you again, Michelle. It was rare for Ethan to be this serious. He nearly made me cry. Don't tease me. I'll ruin my makeup. Ethan gently wiped the teardrop from my lashes. All right. No more tears. Our Michelle has to be the most beautiful bride today. But I haven't fully recovered yet, my waist is still a little wide. Honestly, I hadn't wanted to hold the wedding just 1 month after giving birth. But Ethan simply couldn't wait any longer. That's okay, he said. We'll have more weddings after we go back home, one in Macau, one in Hong Kong, and another in Beijing. You're crazy, Ethan. I just want the whole world to know that I married the girl I love. Ethan pulled me into his arms once more and whispered softly into my ear, Michelle, you'll never truly understand just how happy I am right now.